I think it's pretty safe to say that everybody likes at least one Disney movie. Rather if it's one of their first, one from their Silver Age, or even a newer one, there's a lot to love about Disney. But a lot of people like to discuss which era of Disney films are the best, and each have their own good reasons. But for me, I think their absolute best time would have to be their Renaissance age. There were so many good films released around that time, and so many of them became their own classics. And I'm here to rank every single one of them from worst to best. Now, this list isn't technically what is the best or the worst. This list is very opinionated. So with that said, let's start with the worst and work our way up to the best.
Papa, don't kill him, Captain John Smith. Me, Pocahontas, love him. Yum, 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 yum.
Now, for the record, I don't hate Pocahontas, but out of all the Disney Renaissance films, this one is by far the weakest. I mean, the main reason why people don't think this one is nearly as good as the others is mainly because it's really boring. It's kinda your typical love story that we've seen in a bunch of other films before. Also, with the whole love aspect of two people who were told not to be together, I was just thinking to myself that I could be watching Romeo and Juliet instead. But with that said, there are a lot of really good things in here. The animation is arguably some of the studio's best looking animation, and the soundtrack isn't too bad. But as for me, I don't see myself putting this one on ever again. While this film may be better than Pocahontas, that doesn't mean I think it's perfect. Very similar to Pocahontas, Tarzan isn't that interesting of a Disney film. While I liked the soundtrack from Pocahontas, I can't stand the soundtrack to Tarzan. Maybe it's because I'm not a fan of Phil Collins, but the soundtrack feels pretty dated to me. The side characters aren't that interesting, most of them just come off as either boring or annoying to me. But with that said, the two characters who I actually do like in this are Tarzan and Jane. They both have good chemistry with one another, and the way how they interact with each other is rather cute. And if I do end up watching this film again, it's most likely because of them. So I'd say I like this a bit more than Pocahontas, but not by a whole lot. I'm very split with this movie. There's a lot of things that I love in this movie, but there's also a lot of things that I don't like. I know this film has a big following behind it, and that's alright, there's nothing offensively awful in this movie, but I don't know if I'd call it as good or as bad as what everyone else does. Okay, let's start with the stuff that I don't like. The soundtrack, for the most part, is pretty forgettable. It's not as bad as something like Tarzan, but there's not really a whole lot of songs that really stuck with me. I'm also not the biggest fan of how it's presented as a mix of both ancient Greek mythology and modern casino attractions. It comes off as very dated to me. But with all that said, there are a lot of good things in this movie, especially the characters. Hercules isn't too special, but I don't hate him. Megara is very sassy, which always gets a chuckle out of me. Danny DeVito, as always, is a highlight. And then you have one of the funniest villains in all of cinema. James Woods as Hades is gold. I love how he delivers each of his lines. You can tell that James was having a lot of fun with his character and put his all into it. Would I watch this one again? Maybe, but not as much as some of the others on this list. Now that we've gotten all the mediocre Disney movies out of the way, let's start with the great ones, starting with the film that started this Renaissance period. The Little Mermaid is considered to be one of the most important animated films in Disney history, right up there with Snow White and Cinderella, and I can definitely see that. Though over time it has been receiving less than positive reviews from people, and they definitely have their reasons. For example, this film possibly started a lot of Disney cliches, like a princess who wants more and a father who doesn't approve of this, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I can see some people not liking Ariel as a character, but most of the bad stuff in this film doesn't bother me as much. I love Ursula in this film. Over time, she's become one of Disney's best villains, and I think she deserves all the love she gets. And I also really like the underwater world. I've always been interested in life underwater, I mean, it is in my name, and the animation of the creatures underwater is very smooth and pretty to look at. Can I see why some people don't like it? Yeah, but I personally really enjoyed it. Before we had those crappy DVD Disney sequels, we had one of the greatest animated sequels of all time. To say that The Rescuers Down Under is an underrated film would be an understatement. I know so many people who don't like the first Rescuers movie, but they love Down Under. How often do you hear that the sequel is miles better than the original? I think the one thing that this film does exceptionally well is that you don't need to see the first one in order to watch this one. I can only think of a few sequels where that's the case. I love almost everything in this movie. The performances are great, especially George C. Scott who plays the villain. The animation is amazing. The first 10 minutes of the movie is groundbreaking. I mean, look how big that is. So yeah, it's an underrated classic for a good reason, and I definitely recommend this film to any fan of Disney. I know most of you would be expecting this one to be at the top of the list, and don't get me wrong, I love The Lion King as much as everyone else, but for me to say that it's my absolute favorite Disney Renaissance film would be wrong. Honestly, what can you say about this movie that hasn't been said before? The animation is amazing, the songs are timeless, the characters are great, and it was a massive part of almost everybody's childhood. I remember I used to watch this film all the time when I was 10 years old, and I still love watching it from time and time again. But over the years, I kinda noticed more flaws in it. The movie does kinda become boring when Simba grows up, and it's not necessarily bad, but compared to the first act of the movie, it's one of the weaker parts of the film. But honestly, the good easily overshadows the bad in this film. I always get goosebumps whenever the opening scene comes on, and in my eyes, it's my personal favorite opening to any Disney movie. The animation is sensational as always, and the characters are really good, especially Rafiki. I still love The Lion King after all these years, but it's not quite the best for me. Mulan has recently been gaining more of a following as of recently, and I'm really glad that it is, because it's one of my absolute personal favorite Disney movies. It received okay reception when it first came out, but as the movie became older, the more respect it gained from fans, including myself. So, what do I like about this movie? The soundtrack to this film is, in my eyes, one of Disney's best, if not my personal favorite. The songs do a good job at making you feel the emotion that the songs are going for. The characters are also really great. The side characters usually always get a laugh out of me, and Mulan herself is a very strong and independent character. I also love the minor details they put in the animation. For example, I love how most of the fire and smoke have spirals. It fits in pretty well with the Chinese culture. My only problem with the film is that I don't really like the villain all that much. He's not one of the stronger Disney villains in my eyes, but other than that, I love this movie, and it's something that I'd watch again and again. If The Little Mermaid wasn't the film that got everybody talking about Disney again, then that film would have to be Beauty and the Beast. This film is a straight up classic. If there's one film that perfectly fits the title of a Disney Renaissance film, it would most definitely be Beauty and the Beast. There are very few things that I don't like in this movie. Most of the things that I don't like are mainly just nitpicks. For example, I personally don't like the design of the human beast, and a few of the songs I could have gone without. But other than that, I love this movie. Belle is easily one of Disney's best written characters. She's not like the regular Disney lead. She does her own thing and doesn't care about what anyone has to say about her. And while I can understand why some people may not like Ariel, I don't see how anyone could hate Belle. The Beast is also a great character. While at first he does come off as, well, a beast, he does show a lot of love towards others in the end. The songs are fantastic. I especially love the opening to this movie and the title track. The animation is gorgeous. The more I watch this movie, the more I love it. And it's one of the best films that Disney has ever made. Out of all the Disney films that have been made, I don't think you can get any darker than this. While I know it's very different from the book, I can't help but love this film. The Hunchback of Notre Dame might not have been a hit when it first came out, but over time it became a classic and is loved by many Disney fans. I think if there's one word to describe this film, it would be massive. The animation and the soundtrack feel massive. This is one of the few films I hope gets re-released in cinemas, because I think it's something that just needs to be witnessed on the big screen. I also really like the characters. Quasimodo is a likable protagonist, and the film does make you feel sorry for him. Esmeralda has a fun and wholesome personality, but in my opinion, my absolute favorite character in this film, and possibly in Disney history, would have to be Frollo. His views on what he thinks are right and wrong is so twisted, but he truly thinks that he's doing this in the name of God. The only reason why this film isn't any higher is mainly because of the gargoyles. If they weren't in this film, this probably would have been higher. But nope, they're here. But other than that, I think Hunchback deserves all the love it gets, and it's something that I will definitely come back to. I had no problem with putting this one at the top of the list. Aladdin is the closest that Disney has ever come to making a perfect movie. It has everything that a Disney film needs and more. A great soundtrack? Check. A likable protagonist? Check. Wonderful animation? Check. This is one of the few movies where I can't find any bad in. The reason why I decided to put Aladdin at the top of the list compared to the others is mainly because it feels like the most magical Disney movie to me. And if that was the direction the crew was going for, I'd say they more than succeeded. Robin Williams' performance of the genie is, of course, brilliant. The more I watch this film, the more I miss the guy. And Gilbert Gottfried also does a really good job as Iago, and I can definitely see why he's a favourite in terms of Disney sidekicks. The animation is also really wonderful. The backgrounds especially look gorgeous. I know I'm kinda gushing at this moment, but Aladdin has always remained to be my favourite Disney Renaissance film ever since I was a child, and it hasn't changed since then. So what are your rankings of the Disney Renaissance films? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, I'm Wallfish.